1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Lay It on the Table, the Southern Board Game Podcast with the accent on Southern. As usual, I am your host, Joe Mahaffey, and I am joined, as always, with my good friend and partner in crime,
the very celebrating, feeling kind of guy, James Engelhardt. Joe, that was fantastic.
Well, it always helps when you have the copy in front of you and you can refer to it.
It does,
my brain
and in big font too. That helps.
That does always help. Although I got to say, maybe I'm doing some things right now to be more focused in my life, so maybe that's helping a lot. I don't know. We will see. Well, here we are back again after 2 weeks, and once again, we do not have a guest today, but I think we have some really interesting things for you to hear about coming up real soon. So stay tuned for that. I'm not going to tease it any more than that because today I want to get into some news and notes. And I just want to say, oh my God, Wizards, really? Is that really?
Yeah.
I am just so.
I was surprised that the Pinkertons are still alive. That was my.
Yeah, well, so that's the thing. I mean, so when I hear about the Pinkertons, and we're going to get into what this is in just a second. When I get into the Pinkertons, I immediately think about Abraham Lincoln. Because back, the Pinkertons.
I was thinking of, railroads and, yeah.
So the Pinkertons are the United States version of the Wagner Group. I mean, that's a way to think about it. Okay. Because at one time, the Pinkertons were bigger than the United States Army. Think about that. And They were formed in 1850. They were a private detective agency. Pinkerton was a Scottish guy that came over to the States. And early in the Civil War, there was no such thing as a Secret Service. And the Pinkerton Agency was the Secret Service for Abraham Lincoln. So that's how far back this organization goes. Very storied history in American culture. Mm-hmm. They were part of the pursuit and ultimate apprehension of Jesse James, a distant relative of my wife, surprisingly.
That explains some things.
That does explain a lot, very much so. We will not unpack that on this particular episode because she does listen to it and I have to live with her. Okay, so we're not going to go there. But they were so iconic that in many ways they're represented in the video game Red Dead Redemption or Dead Red Redemption. I can't remember the name of it, but because I'm not a video game player much. Yeah. But they're kind of represented in there. So long story short, let me just kind of unpack this for everybody, for those of you who don't know. And I would be very surprised if there are a lot of our listeners that have not heard this story. So typically what happens, and I can validate this with my friendly local game store, Carolina Tabletop Games, not a sponsor. A lot of times, new product is coming out. Distributors will send it to a store and it's under what they call embargo. So I have it in my warehouse. It's a Friday. It doesn't release to the public till Tuesday. So I'm not allowed to put it out on the floor. I'm not allowed to sell it. I should have a cash register system that says if I scan it, it says it can't be sold until this date.
Pretty basic stuff.
Basic stuff. Because the idea is you want it in the store so that the day it drops, it's available, right?
Right.
So this guy goes into his local game store and he buys some magic cards. And these magic cards, he thinks he's getting one set of cards that is a current available set. He gets home and realizes, no, he's got something different, something new. And so he goes on his YouTube channel and he's got more followers than we do. But
Eagle, give it to us. Give it to us.
But Eagle. He does have some followers. So Wizards doesn't politely call him and say, hey man, those aren't supposed to be released yet. Would you mind taking down the video for a couple of days and then put it up? They don't even call him and say, hey, where'd you buy those? Because
that would have been work. Because
technically the villain here, or the person who made the mistake, is the owner of the store that he bought them from.
Right.
And what that generally does is it gets you a demerit, or they could pull the license for you to sell the product, which could affect the guy's livelihood. Don't get me wrong, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
But instead, Wizards of the Coast allegedly, and I'm just going to say allegedly all this because, sent the Pinkertons to the guy's house, knocked on the door as if they were the cops, threatened him with jail time and like a $200,000 whatever fine, I don't know, and really just tried to bully and intimidate the guy into all of this stuff. And evidently, according to the journalist Linda Codega from Gizmodo IO9, the young lady who dropped the OGL story, and I probably just did the pronoun wrong on her. I apologize, Linda. Said that this isn't the first time that the Wizards of the Coast has used Pinkerton to intimidate customers. So it's really just an unusual thing. I'm very surprised that is the tack they would take in the wake of the OGL. I don't know.
It does seem very really strange. Yeah. One of my students was talking to me about this in class on must have been Tuesday.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh my God." And I had not heard about this.
And by the way, it is Red Dead Redemption. I think I was right the first time I see it here.
I mean, yeah.
But anyway,
but that's just amazing.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing when, I mean, it seems to me now it could be that this was not an honest mistake, but it seems to me it would be an honest mistake. Think about it. I mean, I don't know what your friendly local game store is like. My friendly local game store has the owner who's done this for years. He likes to have some time off, so he has employees, right?
Sure.
Typically the employees he gets are people who are in their late teens, early 20s. And I could see somebody making a mistake. Saying, "Oh, I've got these magic cards in the back. Hold on a minute," or what have you, and not understanding that, hey, there's a ramification for selling this. I just think there's such a better way that they could have handled this, particularly of the fact that somebody didn't say, "Hey guys, given what happened in January, we should probably do something different here."
Yeah. No, slow rolling it and doing it a little under the table, being a little quiet about it. And I mean, I can't imagine that this guy was thinking, "Haha, I'm going to make I don't know what he's not going to make any money off of this. It's kind of cool to be the first one to have the information." But I mean, I don't know. I just don't understand why Wizards just got so freaked out so quickly.
Well, I'm sure it's designed to protect IP, and it's interesting.
Sure, but one dude has one set of cards, and
no, I totally agree. It's interesting because I was in the game store yesterday and we were talking about this, and we were also talking about Games Workshop and their Warhammer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later in the program. But it's interesting to me because they were saying, gosh, when this has happened before at Games Workshop, which evidently it has, they're just like, okay, we're releasing it now then. It's out.
Yeah. It's out. It's out. Away we go.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's
super heavy-handed, and it is absolutely tone deaf. I mean, it's on the other side of the Magic D&D divide, and yet these two worlds kind of overlap quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they don't for me. I have pretty much zero interest in Magic, but I play D&D, so it's just interesting that they're wrong-footing it on both sides of the field, as it were.
Well, and I think it's I think you said it best when you said they're tone deaf. I think there is a sense that I kind of feel like Hasbro needs to invest in some sort of image consultancy to really say, okay, you need to fix this, because you have two brands that are basically at the core of what will move your stock price.
Yeah.
A sale of Monopoly is not going to move your stock price. This is your brand. Mattel's got Barbie, you've got this. You know, and I think the movie looks like it's going to make the money. It's already made the money back.
Ah, good for them.
I think when you factor in everything, it's going to be out on stream May 16th. It drops because I've already pre-ordered. Okay. I pre-ordered it on iTunes, so I will be able to watch it in May. So I feel it's a good bit that they're finally kind of equalizing out. There was this whole thing about you know, that it was going to remain as the Kleenex and FedEx of the tabletop role-playing game world. And I just don't know why they would do these unforced errors like that. It just really, it's just disappointing. It's just
it is, and it's a weird overreaction. I mean, that's another thing that I keep thinking about is like, I mean, here's this guy, fairly small fish. Why? I mean, a quick cease and desist letter, as you mentioned earlier, even just a call or an email, just saying, "Hey, dude,
yeah,
hold that until for 10 days. Just hold it, and then add a little bumper at the beginning that says, "Woohoo! Here's a fun, super early look." Whatever.
Well,
unhappy baby in the background.
No, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Yeah. I think that everybody knows that you have Emerson.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just used his name live on TV.
That's okay. He's also a little unhappy about the way lunch is going down. It sounds like.
I see.
Yeah,
I see. Well, I tell you, it's one of those things where they're despite all this, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. At the same time, Critical Role has come out and announced their Dagger Heart game system.
Yep.
And that is going to be an interesting test for the folks at Hasbro. And you would think that they could have used this opportunity, Wizards of the Coast. A better way to have done it would have been to call this guy and say, listen, we understand that this is a mistake. We would appreciate it if you take the video down. If you do, if you would, we will give you some exclusives. We will promote your YouTube channel. We will help you become a better, more seen influencer. That's a quid pro quo I could get behind. That's not intended.
That's a nice little carrot to offer too.
Because I didn't look too closely at this guy's YouTube channel. I want to say he's his followers are. He's probably got more now because of this. But I mean,
the IO9 article said around 4,000 at the time. So.
Yeah, so 4,000 followers. He's not making any money on that site. No. I mean, we interviewed Professor Dungeon Master a few weeks back, and he's around 200,000 followers, and he's just getting to a point that he felt like he could, if he wanted to do this full time, he could. And there's so much more to the algorithm than the number of followers you have. It's how long people watch your videos and how long you can keep them there. I think the magic number is 10 minutes. If you look at like a Mark Rober video, there's a whole psychology the way he does his videos to get you to stay to the end. And that's why he's one of the best YouTubers out there. Anyway,
well, I mean, you can study that from TV from going back a ways. Like, how do you tease enough so that your audience stays around to wants to know the end of the story by the time you get there? Yeah,
that's exactly right. So I'll put these articles in the show notes, and also I found a really nice top 10 things you didn't know about the Pinkertons. So we'll put that in the show notes below. But this is, come on, Wizards, Hasbro, you can do better, and I think that you should.
Oh yeah,
So leaving it there. So that is my rant and disdain of the morning.
All right.
But in other news,
get that off your chest. Shake it out.
In other news, I found a really interesting YouTube, and I'm going to put it in the show notes. I know you had a chance to watch it.
I did.
So Jamie Stegmaier did a retrospective with Elizabeth Hargrave on Wingspan design. And of course, being in IT and being involved in agile product development where you typically do a retrospective, I found this to be a really neat interview. But I'm really curious to hear your perspective on
it. My first thing was like, wow, Jamie's got some weird looking hair. And wow, Hargrave knows how to really dress the set. As well as wear clothes that make her eyes just sort of glow out it's kind of amazing. It was pretty funny.
Okay, fanboy much?
No, I like the way they sort of just have their personas built behind them. So she's got like the medals all in a little case, and there's a framed bird and a framed butterfly, and it's like a nicely done, well done, nice. It was pretty hilarious.
Well, Jamie's little attic studio. I mean,
it's hilarious too.
But that's where he does everything. If you've ever watched his weekly Facebook lives, That's where he always is, and I love that. Anyway, keep going.
Sorry, and it's like, I'm going to dress this down, make it small looking. It's pretty funny. No, but I really liked just talking about, like, it sounds like the way that Wingspan first showed up was a very different kind of game. Like, still kind of a tableau builder, less of an engine, more of sort of a race to get a certain number of birds out. And then both of them talking back and forth about how that developed, how he added some tweaks, she added, had different ideas, and they kept developing this thing together, which was very interesting, the sort of level of collaboration that was going on. I also liked her call out to Sid Saxon and the materials that are at the Strong Museum, where you can go and sign up and help transcribe some of his diaries. And one of the things I thought was hilarious was her saying, "Yeah, I don't keep those kind of notes, but I have this email trail back and forth with Jamie, and this is where I kind of pulled all of my reflections from." So, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, I think about, the fact that you have been an editor and worked with other content creators. We'll just call it like that. Mm-hmm. And I kind of, it was interesting to sort of see that dynamic as a board game. Because I remember the early articles on Elizabeth Hargraves where they said, here she was a former staffer for Senator Tom Daschle. Mm-hmm. And she had two passions. She loves spreadsheets, nerd, and she loves birds. Wait, nerd. IR1 too, so I can say that with love and affection. But no, and I loved how that was her inspiration of how do I marry these two things that I'm passionate about that normally would not be found in the same context. Anyway, I just found that to be very, very interesting.
Well, I know that from the sort of origin story, too, of her being an avid gamer and saying, well, I'd like to play a game that has something that I care about in it. And so, Wingspan. I also loved the moments when she's talking about having the sort of values of each card sort of mapped out on the spreadsheet, too. Like, okay, so this card is going to be worth, and just thinking through, like, we see different stuff on the card as it's printed, as it comes to us. It costs this much food, it does this kind of stuff, and it's worth this many points. And for her assigning a value to each one, just one number, like this card's a 2.5, this one's a 1, this one's and sort of then tweaking and adjusting. I'm reading between the lines here through playtest. How all of that happens. I was also interested in how much she listens to the community of Wingspan players and getting ideas from them and thinking through their complaints and their concerns and responding and trying to tweak the game in ways that, probably ignoring the farthest outliers, but trying to pay attention to the ways people play it and what they find interesting, what they're enjoying doing. So that was a nice part of it too.
Well, as I've said many times, I mean, this was the very first board game that brought Dale and I together as a couple into this gaming hobby. And it was because it was so accessible to us both in the sense that we could sit down as a couple, learn a game that you didn't have to be mean to each other to win, that you're playing your own game. And you tally the scores at the end. Now, if you want to be mean and you see that there's a card on the stack that's worth something that you want to keep off the board or you want to try to get out, that's, I suppose you could be mean doing that. But But I think
you fundamentally do a little rage crafting,
And the thing about it is that we love to teach this game. I mean, it's so easy to teach.
Oh yeah.
And it brings other people into the hobby that I can think of on 3 or 4 occasions where I've taught this game and somebody ended up buying it. In fact, one couple bought it for themselves and they also bought a copy for their friend. And so that was just kind of, this is what I love about this game. And so just kind of seeing her kind of design. And the thing I love about her as a designer, we have all of her games that are currently out. We have Mariposas, which she did with AEG. And I love that. I think we've talked a little bit about that in the past here and there, maybe. I love that game just because it's, I was expecting, okay, she's got a one way to go. It's going to be Wingspan for butterflies. It was totally not Wingspan for butterflies.
Very different. It was a very different game.
And it was the kind of game, and I think I've said this before, that kind of reminded me a little bit of chess in the sense that you can actually you have to think about, moves ahead or rounds ahead, and you're kind of setting the table for that in a way. Whereas in Wingspan, I think you're typically planning for the end of round goals in that round. It's hard.
Yeah, it's a lot more tactical than it is long-term strategic. Yep.
And so I think that's I love the fact that she, I find it interesting that she is kind of spreading her design talent around. It's not like she's got a long-term contract with Stonemaier.
Although it sounds like the new one that she talked about in that interview is going back to AEG, and I think Tussie Mussy came out through
Pocket Games.
I don't remember. Pocket Games, okay.
Yeah, so there was AEG, there was Pocket Games, and now Megan Connell, I said Connell on the podcast with her, and I saw her interviewed later, and she said Connell, and I'm like, I've known her all these years, and she's never corrected me, which just tells me she's an amazing person, and I'm a schmuck. Sorry, Megan. When she was on our show,
this confessional brought to you,
I'm just Mr. Apology. This is the apology tour. If Megan and Harry were on the privacy tour, I'm on the apology tour. Okay, I won't go there. Coronation coming up. Maybe there'll be a board game about that. Who knows?
Oh, what are the odds?
Anyway, she was telling us about the Fox experiment, and I totally missed that Kickstarter.
Oh, dude, I was about to ask. I thought the Fox experiment was going to be just around the corner, but okay.
And it's so the Kickstarter was last October. It's due to be out this September, October, maybe.
Okay, and who's bringing that out? It's not an AG again, is it?
It is not. It is. Is it going to tell me? Is it going to tell me? Oh, Pandasaurus.
Oh, okay.
So, little known secret. I'll put it in the show notes, of course. There is a website called The Game Steward.
Yep.
And I have ordered the Fox Experiment all in pledge bundle.
All right, man.
From The Game Steward.
Only 6 left. It says. So
yes,
jump on that,
left.
people.
So, I'm a completionist, so I have to have all the Elizabeth Hargraves things. Games. I'm not a stalker. Yeah. So the Fox Experiment, of course, and then of course her new game. I read about this in Zatu Games in the UK. By the way, I love Zatu Games. They're a UK store distributor. They're amazing. They have a great website. They have great stories, and my copies of Meadow. Both Meadow and the Meadow expansion I have gotten through Zatu Games. The shipping from the UK to the US is really inexpensive, and you typically can get the game if it's like Meadow, which is published in Poland and kind of released in Europe early. You can get those games a little faster than in the United States through Zatu Games. So I have a link to them in the show notes.
Also not a sponsor.
But they have a program. We need to look into that. My wife was telling me about that. Anyway.
Okay.
We won't get into that, but Zatu Games is a great place. Anyway, so she's got a new game coming out in the fall, Undergrove, and it'll be heading into Kickstarter in October. And I've already gone ahead and put on my calendar in late September, start looking at Kickstarter for Undergrove because I don't want to miss that.
Yeah, good. And then that's going to be. It looks like it's going to be interesting. Mushrooms, trees, all kinds of things. Because she's a biologist too, right? Or has some biological interest.
I mean, that's clearly her aesthetic, and I like the fact that she's true to the things that she cares about, and one of that is the environment. And I think when you look at all of her games, and this is something we talked about. So as you know, I've talked about board games in my church before.
Yes.
The Methodist Church actually has a document called the Social Principles or the Social Disciplines, and there they talk a lot about environmental stuff.
Oh, very good.
So with the youth group that we work with, we always try to incorporate that into the things because we want people to care about the environment. And of course, I did scouting for 20 years, and that was also the same thing about how to, leave no trace, take care of the environment, leave things better than you found it. And so her games, Wingspan, Mariposas, even Tussie Mussie's The Flowers. I mean, you're
creating
that sense of importance in the environment. And I think the Fox experiment is indicative of that, saving a species, just different things. It's just, I like that she's on brand, but not so on brand that you can't, that she doesn't have places to pivot and go and really to help educate people in a constructive way, which I like that. And I also like the fact that all the proceeds of Wingspan Oceana went to the environmental disaster in Australia when they had those fires. And so, I mean, it's all about being on brand. And I really like that about her.
Yes.
So. Okay, yeah. So I just thought that was, something after the Hasbro debacle. It was nice to talk about something fun and coming out.
Something positive.
Horizon. Yeah. Yes. So now let's move on to the segment of what is on the table, James. And
what is on the table?
We both look a little light here, but I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, man. I got to tell you, it's the last 2 weeks of the semester. So there was just meetings and award ceremonies and dinners and lunches and get this done, answer questions from students. So just super, super busy. And that ends, let's see, my last final is tomorrow. We can talk about that a little bit too. And then final grades, and then a vast period of gaming opens up in front of us.
That's awesome.
So we had picked up the Geek Up bits for Lewis and Clark.
Right.
I don't remember if I had.
Yep. Yeah, we talked about it on last show. Yep.
Yep, that's what I thought. And so that's been a lot of fun. We played that a couple or 3 times, and it was nice because the first time Laura was like, first 3 or 4 rounds, not so sure about this, and then got very much into it. And so we played that a couple times, and that was that's everything else has just been like waiting for the semester to end. So,
and that's okay. I mean, there are a lot of times when we will put a game on the table and we'll leave it and it'll stay there for weeks because we just enjoy it, or there's nuances to it that you just want to get deep on. In fact, we were in the car yesterday. Speaking of the environment, here in Ballantyne, which is a part of Charlotte where I live, I was driving through the Ballantyne Corporate Park this week and was listening to a podcast. So I just decided to drive around a little bit because they're extending the Greenway into the corporate park. And I was just kind of curious as to where that was going to connect. And I turned the corner and all of a sudden there was this fenced in area. And inside the middle of the fenced in area were a bunch of beehives. And it said honeybees hard at work. And I thought, wow,
that's cool.
This is really cool. So yesterday I took Dale out to see this because I was like, I'm not even going to tell her about it. I'm just going to show it to her because it's just better in person. And so we rode out there and then we just kind of got into a conversation riding around. And she says, I really miss us playing some of our old favorite games. And Wingspan came up and stuff because we're always anxious about making sure that we get the other games on the table. And I said, you know what? It's okay. The other games will still be there. They'll wait for us. We can go ahead and throw Wingspan out. Anyway. So that just made me think about it.
Have you played Honey Buzz? Do you have?
We have Honey Buzz, and we've.
I thought this is where you were going with that.
I should have. I did back Honey Buzz and our Fall Flavors, which is the expansion, which is taking forever to get out, but that's supply chain in China and all the things that we've talked about previously, and the designers have been really, really good about that. And for a while, you couldn't find Honey Buzz. And when I ordered my Kickstarter for the Fall Flavors, I ordered a copy for a friend of mine. And then it started showing up in the stores again. And he's like, is it in yet? I'm like, no, it's not in yet. So anyway.
Yep. And it's a little, Elf Creek is a little company in Champaign, Illinois. So.
And I like their games because the way that they do the graphics, you can see all of their games sort of represented on their board.
And one of the there's a game that I still haven't got my hands on that I keep trying to find, Atlantis Rising, and one of the cards, one of the like playable characters, as it were, the woman who posed for it was a friend of mine, and I was like,
very cool.
I know.
Very
but
cool.
I mean, so I think that's kind of fun too. You're like, oh yeah, no, here are our friends. And I know that happens in other games too, where they're like, yeah, here's a portrait of, Bruno Cathala in this game or whatever. So it's just kind of hilarious.
Well, that kind of makes me think of Dan Halligan in the Obsession game, because all of his cards have got all these old timey people in them, and you just wonder, did he just get a bunch of friends together and say, hey, let's dress up?
Yeah. Well, and there was it Flying Frog that did that for years. That was their aesthetic, was photography, people in costumes, and it was all, people they knew. So that was kind of a nice part of their aesthetic.
So last time we were together, I told you that Dale and I were going to get Don't Forget the Kittens out on the table.
And did you forget the kittens?
We forgot the kittens because we started into it and decided that no, we were going to take instead the Castles of Mad King Ludwig Collector's Edition off the shelf.
Ooh, all right.
And this was like this was off the shelf out of the shrink wrap.
Okay.
So this showed up last fall, late summer, fall. And we reach a point in the year where I begin to put things and I just put them in bags and wait till the holidays for Christmas or something. And so we got this at Christmas, and it just sat on the shelf and decided to pull it out. And we eased into it by just playing the base game and then adding all of the expansions until we've just started playing it with all the expansions where you have moats and towers and everything. And because we had already had between two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, the co-op between Bezier Games and Stonemaier.
Yeah, that's a super fun little game too.
A lot of we remembered all the icons because the iconography is used in both, and so that was cool. And but we really enjoyed it. I think I say we enjoyed it. Dale got very frustrated. She got very mad.
Oh no, what happened?
So the way it works is you get certain bonuses if you complete a room. And the way you complete a room is that all entrances to the room must connect or be composed in a way to be completed. But if you do the moat, you have this square space. And if your card bumps up against the wall of the moat, that doesn't complete the room. It's not a hallway. It's a wall. And you don't get the bonus. And she was very frustrated with that. I'm like, do you want to make a house rule? She's like, no, because if we learn it wrong and we're playing it in the store, no. And so, I was trying to be accommodating. But it's been a while since she's really gotten mad about a mechanic of a game, and she was pretty mad about that. But other than that, we've enjoyed the game.
So you've kept playing it after that. Now
we kept
that you've
playing
got the moat rule,
we got the moat, we got the towers, and the towers are really cool because they gave you 3-dimensional towers. It's a lot like
that's awesome.
The items you get in Tapestry, they look a lot like that. There's one that kind of looks like the Emerald City from the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, that's cool.
And it adds, and the whole thing when you play it all together and you really kind of get the rules down. We played it wrong the first time, of course. But what I do like about this game, and I say this a lot, is multiple ways to run up your score, multiple ways to win, not a one clear path to victory, and nobody has really run away with the game. We're always within maybe 5 to 10 points. The last game we played, we were like, she beat me by 1 point. And nice. I had forgotten about the tower bonus, and I went and ran the tower bonus for me, and then I did her tower bonus, and she still beat me by 1 point. And it was just well-balanced game, beautiful game, and it allowed me to do a couple things because it's such a large. I didn't get the large version. There was like a gargantuan version where the tiles were really big, and you could just. I didn't get that version. But I did get the collector's edition.
Okay.
And I have backed the Kickstarter expansion called Renovations, which is going to give you more tiles.
Yeah, I've been hearing good things. So how long does it take you to get to play through the castle there? The big one.
For a 2-player game, it's about an hour, maybe.
Okay, that's not bad.
Because you're playing for your cards to run out, and so you have 22 for 2 players. You have 11 cards per player.
Okay.
So 2-player game is 22 cards. If you take a moat, you pull one of the cards over anyway. Moats cost $5,000. Hallways and stairs cost $3,000, and everything else is just depending upon the auction board.
Right.
And I've tried a couple of different strategies. I wanted to try the underground, the downstairs, and the dungeons and stuff. And Wanted
Of
to
course
try
you
the
did.
towers. Of course I did. Yes, of course. But it's a fun game, and because the game's been around for so long, there's lots of great videos and lots of great commentaries on how to play the game. And the play style hasn't changed. It's just the beauty of what they've reprinted and all of that is really brought it together. And it's a tile laying game. It's fun.
Yeah.
And the other thing I liked about it, one of the very first Kickstarters I ever backed was from a group in the United Kingdom, and the name of the product was the Level Up, and it's this.
Oh yeah, the one that sort of pops up the table like about 6 or 8 inches or something.
Exactly. So I had gotten that thinking it would be great to put D&D maps on, and people could still kind of sit around the table and have their notes and stuff.
Sure.
But it was also great for this game because it lifted it up off the table. You could see the board and the auction things and all of that, but it also gave you plenty of room on the table to build your castles.
Oh, nice.
And so we set ourselves up side by side. I have that game topper table that's 48 by 72. So we're side by side. We had the TV in front of us. We had, I found a video of like Castles of the Danube that was just flyovers with music. So we had that playing in the background as we're facing the TV so we can kind of see it and all of that. So it was just kind of fun to play that a few times. And it was just easy to set up and just try different variants. So we really enjoyed that game a lot.
Yeah.
I did take it off the table last night.
Okay. What's moving in after that?
It's actually what's next on the Kickstarter game found, backed or intrigued or just picked up. So backed and or delivered. So delivered is Darwin's Journey, the collector's edition.
Oh man. Yeah. I'm super excited to hear about this.
Yeah. So as I said a couple of weeks ago, it showed up. And I got the collector's edition. So I've been seeing people start posting on Facebook and the groups and stuff. So we're going to try to punch it out today and get it on the table and try to learn it today and just kind of keep it there for a while, maybe this week. Really excited about that. In fact, I have a friend of the game store, Grace, who Grace and I had an agreement at one point. We've kind of gotten a little slack on this, that she backs something, she tells me, I back something, I tell her. So we're going to get back in that sync. But anyway, she was like, I was like, did you get your game? She's like, yes. I said, have you played it late? She's like, no, but I really want to.
Well, it's supposed to be a pretty big game, so yeah. I'll be interested to hear how that unfolds for y'all.
Yeah, so we'll start unpacking that today and just kind of ease into it. And of course, it always runs the risk of like, don't forget the kittens, where that's our intention, and then we kind of get into it and decide, oh no, let's pivot over here because Dale had a birthday this past week, and I'll talk in a minute about some of the games that I got her.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to talk about it in a minute. One of them was Earth.
Oh, yeah. Has a lot. Again, I've been hearing a lot of stuff about this one.
Another game that Grace turned me on to. I did not back the Kickstarter, but eBay is your friend.
There we go.
And then I picked up an expansion to Endangered, the Monarch Butterfly.
Okay.
Had just little expansion to the Endangered game, so that was in her birthday pack. And then nice. I got for her, I didn't put that in the notes, Hanakuda. No. It's a traditional card game.
Okay. What's the name again?
Hanakuda, I think is how you say it.
Okay.
Let's see if I can. Let me do it this way. I'm going to be as fast as I can with the.
Zoom.
I know. I cannot believe that I did not put these in the notes. Pencil First Games.
Okay.
Is the publisher of the version that I got, but it's a lot like saying, I'm sorry, Hanafuda.
Ah, okay. Still don't know, but fair.
Deluxe Hanafuda was the game. Right. Let me put it in here in the. Come on, Board Game Geek, catch up with me, please. So it's a very traditional game, similar in the sense that it's been around since the 1700s. This is just sort of a reimagining of it from Pencil First Games. I'll find it. I'll put it in the show notes. But it began in 18th century Japan. It's very small, playing cards, and you're just it was just a very pretty game, and thought it would be kind of fun because she likes those kinds of things.
Oh yeah.
So anyway,
That sounds awesome.
Pencil First Games, is the publisher. So I got her that, and so all that was in her birthday box.
Nice. That should be super. Well, that'd be lovely.
Yeah. So
Sounds like lovely.
Pencil First Game is also the game designer that did Floriferous.
Oh yeah.
If you remember that from a while ago.
I do.
We liked that game a lot too. So that was definitely part of the desire to get this.
Okay.
Anyway, so but the whole purpose of this game is it's Japanese inspired. What am I trying to say here? It focuses on aesthetics rather than numbers, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I'm going to add that to the picked up section here. It'll be in the show notes. I'm doing that right now. Pencil First Games.
All right.
Create
Pencil First Games.
There we go. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's that. Boy, that took a long time to unpack. Jeez.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
We're also here for you, man.
other Kickstarters. I did back another STL 3D printing game, The Mystical Forests of Brianna.
It looks super cute.
Yeah, I thought so. And I am in the process now of I'm printing a insert for Hero Quest that I talked about last time. It's been taking me days to get this thing done. And
That's amazing.
Then I'm going to start printing terrain. So I'll update you guys on how my terrain printing goes later. So
Yeah.
Mystical Forest of Brianna. And I see you actually put some things in here you're intrigued by.
I did. Well, and it moved from intrigued to seal the deal on it pretty quickly, and I just haven't moved it around in the notes here. But so 10 years ago, I saw this game paperback that was being kickstarted. It was early sort of kickstarting at that point, and I was like, "Whoa!" I didn't have a word game in my collection. Paperback looked like a really interesting version of a word game. This has deck building and all of the kind of fun stuff that goes with deck building. And so I picked up paperback, and then a while later there was hardback, and I backed that one as well. And so for the 10th anniversary, Tim Fowers, who doesn't do Kickstart videos very well, but he means well. And it works for him. I guess he has a good enough product that people are intrigued. So it doesn't matter how kind of like, wow, that's just you standing there talking. Very old school version of Kickstarter videos, but he has a new version of paperback, which has has rebalanced some of the cards, has new art. So that's cool. And a couple of other play modes that became very intriguing. One of which is genre mode, where you get genre cards and you're kind of fulfilling these little side quests of using these cards to get either one-time or game-long bonuses and some points for that as well. So I was like, this is pretty cool. The kicker, because I thought that was nice, is Typewriter, which it seems like kind of built around the paperback structure, the ideas behind it, but it's a travel game, and it's made of these little tiles that are made to look like sort of very old school typewriter keys. So just the contact points there, and at some point you flip them over and you buy more. I don't know exactly how it works. Don't really care. It's great to have another little travel game that's very small that Laura and I can take to, if we're taking Emerson out to a playground or something, we can sit at the picnic table and play this a little bit, and it's not going to blow away in the wind, and that's fantastic. So I was intrigued by this, watched the video, said, this is interesting. Laura, what do you think about? And it has a travel. She's like, done, go get it. Let's go sign up.
That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
so
that's
that
funny.
was pretty fun.
And knowing you like I do, and as much as you have to travel, whether you're headed to West Virginia, you're headed to Illinois, and sometimes you just get stuck in a hotel room and because of snow.
Sometimes you do.
Having games to play like that. And I think so you ought to take a really close look at the Hanafuda deck for that very reason. That might also fit that idea. So cool. Yeah. So that's nice. I'm glad to know you're finally backing something because I feel less conspicuous that I'm doing all this.
Yeah, there's a couple that are coming down. I think that are going to be very interesting, including it's going to be 6 months until Evergrove comes out, but
Yeah.
or Undergrove. There it is.
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
Everdell, whatever.
Everdell,
Yeah.
sure. So obviously, in the picked up world, I've already talked about Earth. I won't get.
And there's Hanafuda. Ooh,
yeah,
that does look lovely.
I added Hanafuda there to the show notes, and then I endangered monarch butterfly limited release sale, and then also I got the endangered Ukrainian ambassador card because you have all these different country ambassadors, and I thought, wow, that's awesome. They added an ambassador for the country of Ukraine. I am on board.
Yep.
There's evidently another one coming out soon where the endangered species is the unicorn.
That's hilarious.
So yet another Grace-inspired looky-loo. Grace told me about that, and Grace is the person who turned us on to Endangered, and we love that game. Same kind of aesthetic to teach the social principles, I guess is what I was referring to earlier. Yeah. So that's very cool. Earth, I was able, actually I got Earth from a person in the Kickstarter version from a person in Tampa. They had a fair, I like people on eBay that don't try to gouge you for the Kickstarter that they bought. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to pick that up on Earth. And then you'll notice I was able to pick up Frosthaven, the Kickstarter edition.
I'm seeing that. All right.
And so the backstory on that is there was a guy in Columbia, South Carolina who had it and just wanted to get his Kickstarter money back. And so I did it through eBay, and he drove up from Columbia and I drove down to Rock Hill, and we met outside the Cracker Barrel, and
as one does for these sorts of
yes. So I decided the more I saw Frosthaven, I was like, I'm really intrigued, and I'm really angry that I did not pick up the Kickstarter. And
did you play through Gloomhaven as well, or
no? Ironically, I didn't. But I think that there's an aspect of Frosthaven that it seems to be a bit more accessible, and they fix some of the challenges of Gloomhaven. But also, you can mix the characters together. So I think I'll probably do Frosthaven, and then maybe back into Gloomhaven, because you can always find a copy of Gloomhaven.
Sure. Yep.
And I will just avoid Jaws of the Lion, because I think that's just designed to be a gateway into the world of Gloomhaven, and I don't really.
Yeah.
I would either be all in or not.
I kind of like the idea of Jaws of the Lion, just as a I can play through this and I'll feel good and kind of get the flavor, and I've kind of intrigued by that one as opposed to the other two, which are bigger than my toddler.
Yeah. And then I found an expansion to Betrayal at House on the Hill, The Werewolf's Journey, Blood on the Moon. Yeah, this is, I'd love to say that I was stalking this and really wanted to do it, but the reality of it was I was in Amazon and I had enough in my cart that if I added just a little bit more, I was going to get a same-day shipping, and this was suggested to me, and I was like, oh.
All right.
Okay. So, yeah, the algorithm works at Amazon, like you didn't know that. Mm-hmm. So, anyway.
Are good about that. Yeah.
A lot of activity in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. And less for me. I mean, so the big activity coming up, of course, for me, which I'm sort of hinting at, is that tomorrow we will have the 2.5-hour game day for the final exam experience.
Awesome.
Small and large universities. One of the challenges they have is professors, because everybody wants to get out. And so professors are like, you know what? It's the last day of class. Why don't we just do the exam there short, and boom, everybody's done. And so campus empties out, and they cook too much food, and they keep heat on for all the wrong reasons and all that kind of stuff, or AC on, depending on what time of year it is. And so the schools are like, no, please stay here. Please stay here. You don't have to have an exam necessarily, but have some sort of experience. So that's what we'll be doing. 2.5 hours of board games tomorrow. I have 2 big bags, so we'll see how that goes. I will report in 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Looking forward to it. It's one of my favorite parts of the show. So I love it when you have that to talk about. That's great.
Well, and we'll see. I mean, it's always the sort of gateway, little less, a lot of party games. We'll see what they glom onto.
Yeah.
Another round of dude.
So as we get into the world of D&D and tabletop role-playing games, I want to harken back to our last conversation.
Yes.
And I found some articles that have said, number one, about this whole half-elf thing. That's actually been in the playtest since last August, they said.
Yeah.
And that you're still going to be able to play those games, but those characters, those roles, the terminology around it is going to be different. And that's exactly what I was saying the last time. Is that I felt like, I understood the whole stigma of the word half.
Mm-hmm.
I am a child of the 70s and remember the song Half Breed by Cher.
There you go. Ooh, and that outfit. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, yes. Maybe we'll put that in the show notes. But I felt like there was because I firmly believe that we are in a state of our history where, as a planet, we're going to be more integrated because of the way that people travel and fall in love and make families and stuff like that, that there's got to be a way to honor the vitality that comes from that without making it negative. And so they're working on verbiages of, like, mixed parentages of different species or children of different parents, in a constructive way. And I think that that's fine. Right. That's the whole argument I was making the last time. So I was glad to see Hasbro. And Wizards of the Coast, I started this episode ranting about what pissed me off about you, and I'm still pissed off about that. However,
that's fair.
I am grateful that you've actually had some commonsensical ways to say, look, this playing this way is not bad. The way we talk about it might be problematic. Let's just change the way we talk about it. And I think that's totally fair. Mm-hmm. Totally fair.
No, and there's a whole lot of great, as we talked about last time too, great story narrative hooks.
Yeah,
when
100%.
You've got these kind of, So this all sounds good to me, but it was, the way it came out was kind of hilarious.
And that's the thing. And I think this kind of harkens back to what I was saying at the beginning of the episode. Mm-hmm. And that is, Hasbro, stop being stupid.
Yes. They keep wrong footing these things.
Get out in front of this stuff and be smart about it. And ease people into it. You put the frog in the water and you warm up the water. You don't go straight to boil. And everything that they've done is going straight to boil, and their customers are just jumping out of the pot. Here endeth the metaphor about the frog in the water.
I was going to say that was interesting.
Yeah. But no, seriously, get an image consultancy, Hasbro, and get ahead of this, because they could have had so many people on board with this and touting how great this was, as opposed to the way they drop stuff. Anyway, yes. We'll save that for another time and another place, because there's
little more context around the why this is inherently racist, as opposed to just saying it's inherently racist, boom, and then walk away like mic drop. Like, there's some people in the audience are going to understand exactly what you're talking about. There's a whole lot of others who are going to say, what the hell? What does that mean?
Exactly.
And a whole lot more of the latter than the former came forward. So, yeah. But yes, you can get ahead of that. You can get ahead of that messaging, get ahead of the language. Yeah.
Well, so
tricky, but worth doing.
Well, it's interesting. So I've been listening to a podcast recently called Pod Meets World. It's a Boy Meets World podcast where three of the actors from the show are rewatching the show 30 years later, and they're commenting on it. And one of the things that they said, there was an episode of Boy Meets World where there was a water gun fight at the school. Mm-hmm. And as they were having the conversation, one of the actors said to the other, were any of you triggered that there were all these guns in this school, even though they were water guns and they were calling them water guns? And my point in bringing that up is that 30 years ago, we had different perspectives on things. 50 years ago, we had different perspectives on things. And so it's all about when you say something and you just assume everybody's on the same page, they're not.
Right. Yep.
And, this particular actress, Danielle Fishel, said in her house, because you can never really eliminate the idea of guns in your children's lives, her and her husband have just started calling everything a blaster. That's a water gun blaster. That's a laser. And so trying to change the verbiage and the way we talk about things, like a water gun blaster, like a super soaker, that kind of thing.
Water blaster, yeah.
It's interesting. But my point is, we're at this stage where there's been a watershed in our culture, watershed events in our culture that basically say words are changing and we're moving so fast, not everybody's keeping up with it. That's a topic for a different discussion. I'm not going to get into it here. But it'll be interesting to see years from now if we go back and do some searches on certain words and phrases. Google Labs has this really interesting site where you can look at the etymology of a word and how long it's been used.
Oh, yeah.
And there's this, if you put in the word Methodist, for example, which didn't really exist until the 1720s, there's nothing in it in the literature until you hit around 1725. But if you also look at words that used to be spelled with an F that are now spelled with an S, you can see the crisscross of how that happened in the Google Labs. So
that's super fun.
I'll stop nerding out on that.
Yeah.
But anyway, in other news, I just got an alert from my weather flow that there's lightning approximately 3 to 4 miles away from me.
Okay.
Critical Role.
Duck.
Yeah, I know.
I hope you make your deck save.
I just hope that the power stays on.
Critical
Role. Darrington Press has come out with Daggerheart,
Yeah.
their D20 system. And you know it's going to come out at Gen Con in August, and you know it's going to be part of Campaign 4. So I'll be curious to see how long Critical Role, with their millions and millions of viewers and their joined at the hip relationship with Amazon, that I think is going to be the new Pathfinder.
Ah, okay.
I would love to tell you that that's the original thought. I actually heard Professor Dungeon Master say that, and so I'm going to give him credit.
It's good to cite your sources.
You know what? I'm not an original. I will tell you that right now. I'm an assimilation of everything I learned.
As are we all.
Yes, I did watch the 3rd season of Picard, so assimilation is in my vocabulary at the moment.
Okay.
So I'll be very curious to see this D20 system and see what he keeps and see what he changes. He could just keep it 5e for all I know, but it'll be very curious to see the divergence that Daggerheart takes. From Darrington Press, part of the Critical Role, and I love the Darrington Press name. If you've ever were involved in the first, it was the first campaign where you meet Terry Darrington was a hilarious character in Critical Role, campaign 1. Hilarious. Anyway. So that's where I love how they stay on brand as well. Speaking of staying on brand. And so now I'm going to pivot to a game that we've never really talked about on the show. And there's a reason why I'm talking about this, and it's not because I'm getting into it. I'm not. I am not. By the way, before I go there.
Oh, yes.
I meant to say this earlier about Magic the Gathering.
Oh, all right.
I was in the game store yesterday, which is relevant to this story.
All right.
I was in the game store yesterday, and we talked about Magic the Gathering and I just finally said, look, guys, I'm the last man standing. I am going to be that character from Invasion of the Body Snatchers that's like, run away, they're not real, last man, when it comes to Magic the Gathering. That might be true with Warhammer as well. But I'm going to talk about Warhammer for 2 reasons.
All right.
Reason number 1. My brother Lloyd, who's 12 years older than me, lives in California and Idaho, depending upon what he's doing, was in town for his 50th high school reunion because he's older than me.
Wow. Okay. Yes.
And we had lunch.
Reunion.
We had lunch right across the street from the game store. Did that on purpose because I wanted to walk him into the game store. Lloyd and I being 12 years apart, we share a lot of similarities, but we don't have a lot of our community growing up was non-existent because by the time I was growing up, he was already out of the house.
Right. Yep.
So walked him over to the game store, and I had a couple of years ago given him a copy of Viticulture for Christmas because he lives in wine country and he's a wine aficionado, and I thought he'd really enjoy the game.
Sure.
When he was in college, he went to the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina, and around exam time, they would have 2-week-long games of Risk, and you did not touch the board. It was like that scene from Seinfeld where you didn't touch the board. So he was talking about that. So I took him over to the game store, and I introduced him to Rob, the owner, and I was just sort of showing him around. And there was a group in the back playing Warhammer.
Sure.
And one of the folks playing Warhammer, was a 2013 graduate of the Citadel.
Oh, man.
And he and his wife both went to the Citadel, which was a very different experience than my brother had. My brother was there when it was still an all-male college. And actually in the 70s, when Prince Charles came over to tour the United States, he toured the Citadel, and my brother was his aide for the day.
Ah,
so
well,
we
that's
have
a cool
so we have a
side
picture
note.
of the two of them saluting one another, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
But anyway, so I wanted to introduce Lloyd to this guy, and the guy was like, my wife at the Citadel, which was interesting because my brother was on the board of visitors that was part of like voting to let girls into the school and stuff like that. So there was just all kinds of interesting conversation. But anyway, long story short, in another direction, he was fascinated by Warhammer.
Okay.
And the game, because he loved playing army strategic games as a kid and Risk and stuff like that. And so Warhammer just intrigued him. And I just left him in the room for a while and let him ask questions and walk around the board. And there's a guy at the store. His name's Rob, different Rob. He goes by Red Rob. I honestly don't know his last name. I just know his Discord handle. And nice guy, known him for years.
Right.
And he really took the time in the middle of this game to explain everything that was going on move by move so my brother could get into it. And it's because Rob, Red Rob, as I will just continue to refer to him, I want to say Red Rum, but I'll say Red Rob, is an evangelist for Warhammer. He runs all the Warhammer events at the store. He's a neat guy. So he was just really taking the time to make the game very accessible because he was doing a teaching game anyway.
Okay. So
later, and this is where we're going to get to these things I put in the show notes. Later, Lloyd's looking at all the Warhammer stuff in the store. And basically he's just looking at the books, kind of looking at the equivalent of the Dungeon Master's Guide or the Player Handbook. There is a set of core rules for Warhammer.
Yes, there are.
And they did not have that in the store.
Oh.
And so we asked the owner of the store, hey, does this box have the core rules in it? And he goes, I'm not really sure. Let me ask Red Rob. So Red Rob comes over and he goes, nope, it doesn't. He goes, but I tell you what, I'm going to give you this. And he hands my brother his copy, his loved copy of the core rules.
Oh, man.
Of Warhammer. And my brother's like, well, look, I don't live here. I can't get this. He's like, no, I want you to have it because there's new rules coming out in June and I have these rules memorized.
So I'm going to buy the new box anyway. So,
and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, dude, if I had another I would be like, no, this is going on my collection. But that's different between me and Rob. So he gives my brother the core book, and then he starts telling me, Warhammer 40K 10th edition is coming out in June. They teased it this weekend. They're simplifying the rules a bit to make
down to
things
392
more
pages.
accessible.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. So new edition of Warhammer 40K 10th edition coming out. The starter set is Leviathan. I put some articles in the show notes from Wargamer to talk about the full reveal as well as 8 new rules in 10th edition. A whole bunch of stuff. I think, this is a Lay It on the Table podcast. There are people that lay Warhammer on the table, and
they do.
I have learned a lot about 3D printing and painting from the Warhammer guys, and it really informs and gals. And it really informs my fantasy painting. So, we're all brethren here. So I wanted to include that because the fact that Games Workshop, they didn't say that 10th edition is going to be their version of 5e, but they're trying to make the game a bit more accessible, which I think is smart.
One of my students last semester was a big Warhammer guy, and several of his papers focused on how incredibly dense and unfriendly the rule set is, and just how that keeps people who might be interested because it looks cool, it sounds cool, they like weird science fiction post-apocalyptic stories that are kind of tongue-in-cheek. And he's like, nope, people take a look at this and just run screaming the other direction. They really need to change this. So that'll be interesting to see if they actually do a kind of 5e, actually strip it down a little bit. 392 pages sounds like not a lot of stripping maybe, but I don't have much to go on except the student and now talking with you impression. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Well, and it's interesting to me because when I look at Warhammer 40K in particular, I think back to Gary Gygax and I think about the games that he was playing.
Oh yeah,
that were the war games that really ultimately inspired him to do the D20 system. Yeah. And I think about, people that set up their cavalries from like the English version of the games, or some people that used to play board games like that, but it was like Civil War and you either were the Greys and the Blues or the Revolutionary War. And there's even a group of guys that will periodically...
Kriegspiel, old Avalon Hill stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that will get together in the game store and they'll play World War II and they have the tanks and they have all the good guys and the bad guys and all that stuff. And so I think about how Warhammer Games Workshop said, this is still a viable way to play the hobby, but let's add this fantasy element to it, or this mechanized thing to it. So we're less about, so it's just more kind of like modern and shaped outside of these different kinds of constructs. And so I think that's kind of interesting. And the fact that they're reaching a point where they want to make it more accessible. We'll see how it goes. Because I think there's a lot of competition in this tabletop space.
Oh yeah.
We obviously see it with Warhammer. I think I mentioned going to Myrtle Beach and going to the game store in Myrtle Beach and finding that instead of Warhammer, everybody was wild about Game of Thrones, but that's that same mini type game where
there was HeroClix that was huge and it's still around.
And even Night Models that put out the Harry Potter miniatures game, and they have the Batman miniatures game, and just all these different things where you can have an ongoing campaign style game. But I just found this to be very interesting, and what really excited me about it was obviously my brothers looked like a kid. He's 12 years older than I am, so he's like 67, 68. And he is like a kid again, watching him in the store, which was kind of neat. And so he took the core rule book. I sent him a link to all the friendly local game stores in the Boise, Idaho area, which is where he's kind of settling. And he thinks he and his son could really get into this. So I just thought that was kind of cool. And so I wanted to include it in here. And then also, because I've been doing a lot of tabletop printing and painting, I began to look in the whole concept of airbrushing. And I found this.
Speed this thing up a little bit, right?
I'm not going to get deep in the weeds on this in this conversation, but I did find a really cool airbrush compressor at Harbor Freight. It's the same compressor that everybody's selling. It's cheaper, like by $100 than what everybody else is selling.
Oh, wow.
So I wanted to put that in the show notes. It was actually on sale. I got it for like 15% off that price that you see right now.
Nice.
It came with a airbrush, but I also picked up the Neo on Gravity airbrush from Amazon because I had some points that I had to use, and I like the idea of that. And
very cool.
Then I got and then Army Painter's Speed Paint Mega Set came out, which is just a lot more colors for speed painting, just to simplify the process. I picked mine up through Game Nerds, a great store, so I have the link in there where I got it.
Fantastic.
So just some things in there that I picked up recently that I wanted to share with the community. Around airbrushing, I have a number of friends that have been doing it, and I like the tactile feel of the airbrush where you can push the button and get it's a dual action, which means you push the button, you get airflow, and then you suddenly pull back and you have control over the volume of the paint. So you can do a little bit more of a nuanced thing, and I think I have a little bit more tactile flexibility there than I do with just brushes, because brushes I'm really bad at brushes, but I recognize that. So anyway,
excellent.
That's all I have this week.
Oh man, yeah.
If there's anything
I will have more next time when we talk about seeing what the Furman students do. That'll be super fun. I'll report back on what got to their tables.
Oh, I do want to point out though that James was on the Spiel recently. And I will put a link to that in the show notes as well. And you can hear James slumming with the big guys, leaving me down here in the basement. No. You've got a long-time relationship and friendship with those folks. And it's great that, you were able to get up there and represent. And I appreciate you shouting out our little project here. And so we'll make sure that is in the show notes as well. And of course, as always, you can follow us if you go to layitonthetable.show. That is our website with a gateway to all the different places that you can find us. So please go there and leave us a comment or a hello. You can even leave us a voicemail there, believe it or not, or even buy us a cup of coffee.
Awesome.
You can also head over to Apple Podcasts and give us 5 stars if you like, and leave us a review. It can even be a snarky review and tell people how wrong I am when I use the pronouns wrong. I'm happy to take that type of criticism. And of course, you can find us in a couple of places on Board Game Geek where we have a guild, and also a link to our podcast there. And as always, because we started this whole thing as Geek and Southern on YouTube, you can find the video version of our podcast there, as well as some of the games that we have been playing with our friends online at Geek and Southern on YouTube. So we look forward to you finding us there. And as always, I am Joe Mahaffey, and I am not bored. I am board gaming.
And I am James Engelhart, hoping that all your tiebreakers break your way.
We will see you in a couple of weeks.
1, 2, 3, 4.